it's Creations by Courtney here with part 2 of 4 of the Kiera crochet dress. Let's get started. So at this point within the pattern, you should have the bottom part of the skirt done. This is the part that will be from slightly above the knee up to around the hip. And if you want to adjust the length, make this shorter or longer, you're going to make more rounds in this section before starting decreases. And if you want to, take your tape measure and go ahead and check the length. And since I'm making a size small, it should be 15 1/4. And that's in inches. In centimeters, that would be 38.7. So there we go. The beauty of gauge, right? All right, so before we start this round, actually, let's take the hook out. So before starting the decreases, right, you can either place your stitch markers first or kind of work with you. So if you want to place it before to give you an estimate, and again, it's going to help to count. But if you lay it where the first stitch is here and literally smooth it out and look at the stitch that's behind the first one. So in this case, that's here. So that's going to be one of these 3 stitches. So I'm going to place a stitch marker here within this stitch, and I'm using different color stitch markers so that it's clear when working, since I have these marking the first stitch of the previous rounds, right side rounds. But eventually this is going to be along the side, so that's why it doesn't have to be exact right now. But let's get started. So I like to have my working yarn behind me. Okay, we are going to chain 1. Again, the pattern is the same. There's nothing super fancy happening. We're going to front post double crochet around the first stitch. Okay. Now, we're going to skip this stitch. Not this one. This one we don't work in because it's behind the post stitch. We're going to skip this one and we're going to work here. So when skipping, because of the alternating pattern, typically we would do a double crochet next, but in order to maintain the pattern, we're actually going to do another front post double crochet. That way the stitch pattern remains the same. So this is where you want to put your first stitch marker, or in this case, the second one, because this is where we're always going to skip in order to decrease. And now we're just going to continue pattern. So you want to make sure that you skip this one, don't work in the one behind it, and then do your double crochet. Right? So you see we're maintaining the stitch pattern. And then front post double crochet, double crochet. And we're just going to continue in this manner until we've gotten about halfway around. So definitely refer to the pattern for how many times you need to repeat the double crochet, front post double crochet until you get around to that halfway mark. All right, now that you have completed the number of repeats of double crochet, front post double crochet, so pretty close to where the stitch marker was placed, but I'm going to take that out, set that down to the side. So this is where we're going to do our next decrease. And again, the decrease is just skipping a stitch. So we're going to, and refer to your size, and this is done to maintain the pattern. For the size small, double crochet in the next stitch, okay, and then skip the next stitch. So some sizes you do not need the double crochet, and others you do. So make sure you refer to the pattern so that you can have your decrease centered while maintaining the stitch pattern. So we're going to skip this stitch, and then we're going to double crochet into the next stitch. And we're going to place the marker. So it might look a bit awkward because of the space, but as we continue the rows, the rounds, it will come together. Oh, and try not to lose your active loop. So again, we didn't make the front post because we're skipping that stitch for the decrease. And now we're going to front post double crochet around the next stitch. Again, remember, you don't work in that stitch behind a post, and then continue in pattern all the way around. And if you didn't, don't forget to move your stitch marker up around that first stitch. It really does help to make sure that your seam doesn't start to lean, because it's really easy with the texture of the stitches to accidentally work in the wrong spot. And if you're right-handed, your stitches are going to lean a little bit to the right, and if you're left-handed, they're going to lean a little bit to the left. All right, so we've completed the first round of decreases. So again, we have the first decrease marked with a stitch marker, and we have the other one. So depending on the size that you're making, again, if you did not need to make this double crochet and instead you stopped at a front post, skip the stitch, your next stitch will actually be a front post rather than a double crochet. But in the pattern, it says continue in pattern, meaning that you're going to continue to place your double crochets on top of a front post double crochet, and a front post double crochet is always worked around a double crochet. So again, that alternating pattern that creates the alpine stitch. And now you're just going to turn your work, chain 1 and single crochet for this round. And for the decreases, we will do those every 4th round. If you need additional ones, then determine which additional right side rounds you will make a decrease. If you need fewer, then definitely do fewer. Again, refer to the pattern for the number of rounds that you will be decreasing, as well as tips for making additional size adjustments. So I will see you back after we complete this round of single crochet to show you how we make the next right side row after having made a decrease. Or skipping a stitch, whichever way you like to think of it. When you get to the stitch with the marker, don't forget to move the marker up. To make your stitch. Oops. Hopefully you won't tangle your stitch marker like I did. Okay, there we go. And then put the marker back in that stitch. And then You make your last stitch like so. If you need to check, flip it over to see the first stitch that's marked, and then slip stitch and turn your work. So on this round, we will not decrease. Okay, so the first stitch is a front post double crochet, so that means we're going to do a chainless starting double crochet, or you can do a chain 2, chain 3, whatever your preference is for that first stitch. Okay, and this is where we skipped on the previous row. We're not skipping this time because we're not decreasing every right side row, but every fourth row. So you'll have a decrease round on a right side row, single crochet. You'll do a right side row, then a single crochet round, excuse me, and then you'll do a decrease the next time. So that's what I mean by every fourth row. So because this next stitch is a front post double crochet, you're just going to make a double crochet into the next stitch. And again, move your marker so you know what stitch to skip when it's time to make more decreases. Put your hook back through the yarn, and now we're going to front post double crochet around the next stitch. And again, this is after that space of skipping. See, back here there's 2 stitches. This was behind the first post, and this was one that got skipped. So continue in the pattern until you get to the next stitch marker. Okay, so when you get to the stitch with the stitch marker, you want to make whichever stitch to continue the pattern. So since this is a double crochet, this will be a front post a double crochet. Now on that previous right side round, if you did not need to make that additional double crochet, then you're likely to have a front post double crochet. So instead you'll make a double crochet and just move the marker up. And again, make sure that you aren't going to work in either of these two, because in my case, I have 2 front post double crochets for the size small. So you work into the next stitch. And again, continuing in the pattern, which means that you are alternating front post double crochet and double crochet. So continue to finish this round. Do the next round of single crochet, and I will come back together after you complete that round of single crochet, and we'll do another round with the decreases just so that you get the hang of it. And then after that, just kind of keep going in the same way. You're going to decrease every 4th round. Follow the pattern to determine how many times you need to do that so that you have the right fit in the bust area. And also refer to the pattern for tips on making any adjustments to the size or the fit of the dress, particularly through the midsection to the bust. All right, so as you see, I forgot to move my stitch markers up. So let's fix that first to make it clear where we are working. So this was the first stitch here. There should have been a stitch marker here. It's really easy when you get to working to kind of forget to move these around the first stitch. And again, you don't have to place your stitch markers around the first stitch, but it seems to help so you know where you're working for the next rounds. Okay, there we go. And again, these for the skip stitch, those are moved up each round. So now that we have completed one row of decreases, which is here, you see those 2 post stitches, right? So we did this round, we did the single crochet, a regular round, which had the 2, actually, I marked the wrong stitches. It's actually this one here. And again, it may shift a bit because of the decreases. Yeah, here we go. And I'll leave that one open so I can just move it up. Okay, so since this was a double crochet, we're going to chain 1 and we're going to front post double crochet. Okay, that's the first stitch. Again, let's mark that. And then this is the decrease area. So this is the stitch that we're going to skip. And so we're actually going to work into the next stitch. So move the stitch marker out of the way and double crochet into the next stitch. And now let's mark this stitch so we know what stitch to skip when we come back around the 4th time. So again, every 4 rows. And this is that row. So again, we're skipping that stitch to decrease. So now we're going to work a front post double crochet around this double crochet 2 rows below. And you will continue in pattern until you get to the next stitch marker. All right, so when you get to the next stitch marker to make the decrease, all right, this is the stitch that we're going to skip. So here we've made a double crochet, and again, you may have a front post double crochet. Skip this stitch and then make the stitch that's appropriate for the next one. So this one will be a front post double crochet, and if yours is the opposite, then make a double crochet. And then let's move the stitch marker up to mark this. And make sure you're working to the right space for the next stitch. So it will be a double crochet, a front post double crochet to maintain the pattern, and just continue alternating between a front post double crochet and double crochet. And that is really the trickiest part for the body. Now, when we get to the front, we're gonna have some fun with crocheting the stitches together. And when you refer to the pattern, I label them as stitch 2 together or stitch 3 together. And you will see when we get to that. So I want you to continue to follow the pattern, making the decreases every 4th round. And for a majority of the sizes, you will also make several rounds without any decreases in order to lengthen the body. And so we will come back together where we will mark the skip stitches for the arm opening in order to start the back. And the back is really straightforward. So I'll show you a little bit of that, and then we'll definitely go over how to start each side of the front. So keep stitching, and I will see you back once you have the body sections completed. So after completing the body, which depending on the size, you have a series of decreases and then several rounds without decreases in order to get the appropriate length. As you see, we have a nice length of fabric now. And again, we are now going to move on to creating the back and then the front in two parts, the neck, opening, ribbing, turtleneck, however you like to call it, and then the hem. And those are the remaining parts of the dress. And so I will show you how to do the neck, and I think you could totally handle doing a basic ribbing made from front post and back post double crochet. But this is the first one. The seam is technically here, although it hides so well with the alpine stitch. And now we're going to mark stitches for the arm opening in order to split for the front and the back. We're going to place the first stitch marker. Okay. And then you're going to lay your piece, right? So you know about where it's going to be, like so. And then count your stitches, the number that you need to count, and then place the next two. So we'll do a little counting. And then start with the stitch with the first marker here, or the marker to the left of the two already placed. All right, so I've counted the stitches to myself because I didn't want to mess up your counting. Place the stitch marker. Again, skip the same number of stitches, so 1, 2, 3. And again, the stitches skipped will vary based on the size that you're making. Now, if you made any adjustments to your dress with the number of decreases, if you did more or you did fewer, definitely pay attention to the notes in the pattern about how to adjust, because with the alpine stitch worked in rows instead of rounds, it needs to be an odd number. So if you want to have it a little bit wider, make those adjustments, or even more narrow. And so now that we have our stitch markers set for the arm opening, pick up your hook, right? And again, if you are cutting the yarn, then you'll attach the yarn in this marked stitch, and you can remove these little charms, just keep falling off, because now that we are done working in rounds, those don't have to be marked anymore. So just take those off. And again, we will continue in pattern. So looking at your previous, the 2 rows below, start with the stitch that is most appropriate. Again, you should have ended on a single crochet round. So for this one, we're going to start with the chain 1, and we're going to front post double crochet. All right, and then we're just going to double crochet into the next stitch and then continue in pattern to the next stitch marker. All right, so as we come to the end of the first row, I'm going to place a double crochet in the last stitch, and then you're just going to turn your work, chain 1, and then single crochet in each stitch across. And then when you get to the next row, you start with 2 double crochet, then a front post double crochet. And this is done in order to maintain the pattern. But the back is just the regular 4-row repeat, like in the body, except for you're working in rows rather than in rounds. All right, now you've completed 2 rows of the back. And now we're going to do a chainless starting double crochet. Okay, and we're going to do a double crochet in the next stitch. And this is to maintain the alpine pattern. Now front post double crochet around the next stitch, and then double crochet. And so you're going to continue with that repeat of front post double crochet followed by a double crochet until you get to the end, where you will have 2 double crochets in the last stitches. Again, the rule with alpine stitch is a front post double crochet is always made around a double crochet 2 rows below, and the double crochet is worked above the front post double crochet from 2 rows below. All right, so as stated, when you get to the end of the row, you're going to have 2 double crochets. The first one is to maintain the pattern, and then the last one is just to end the row. And again, if you make any adjustments to your dress and the width, just make sure it is an odd number. So turn your work, chain 1, and then single crochet in each stitch. And this is pretty much the gist for the back, is that you're going to repeat the 4 rows until it is the number of rows listed in the pattern. So again, you start with a double crochet, front post double crochet, followed by a double crochet, single crochet, turn, single crochet in each stitch, turn, double crochet or a chainless starting double crochet followed by another double crochet, then a front post. So every other row will have 2 double crochets at the beginning and the end. And you will end on a, should be a right side row for the back, where we will then cut a long tail that will be used for seaming the shoulder. So I will meet you back after the back has been completed and we're ready to attach yarn for the front. This concludes part 2 of the Kiera crochet dress. I'll see you for parts 3 and 4. Keep stitching!